Hey everyone, today I have Lieutenant Colonel Puleali'i. Did I say that right?
You said it perfect.
Yes! I felt so bad earlier because I was like literally trying to say her name, but this woman is phenomenal. So she has been in for 18 years. I think is I saw that you came in 2005.
Did. It is.
So
Okay.
did it?
Yes, it has. Everybody says that, but you never believe them until it's actually your turn. And then you're like, yeah, everybody was right.
Oh, okay. Okay. So do you want to do like a couple more years or you could just like almost like, hey, let's go for 30?
Ooh, I don't know if I'm going to go for 30. Definitely until 20 because I got to get that retirement.
Yes.
But it also just depends. Like, I'll be up for '06 in 2 years. So, will I make it? Will I not? And then my spouse, she just got offered a 15 position in DC. So, I don't know. So many things.
Oh my God. Oh, 06. Yes, Queen. Go for it. Because that's like so amazing. Because, yes, so you've been in for 18 years, and I was looking at your resume, and like, I know you probably don't think it's super impressive, but I was like, oh my goodness, she's been to Japan, she's been to Florida, she's been to Osan, she's been at the Pentagon as a intel officer, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So I know you're doing ROTC now, and I know you wanted to plug in that
My
ROTC.
shameless plug.
I know. I was like, I will gladly put that in towards the end. Because today we're going to be talking about that work life balance. Because, like you
Yes.
said, you've been in for a while.
Yes.
So you obviously understand the necessity and the grind and all of that stuff for being in the military and then maintaining that personal life, especially when you've been stationed all over the world.
Yeah, for sure.
So, how do you essentially prioritize and balance the demands, as an officer, as a lieutenant colonel, or just any of your military responsibilities, with your personal life?
Yeah, so it's not the same at every military station that you've been to. There's a lot of external factors that are involved as well. Namely, what's the climate like in your work environment? Do you have a good supportive work environment? But I guess I can start with my current location and how I prioritize that. So I guess it would be helpful to know what I do. I'm an Air Force ROTC detachment commander at the University of Southern Mississippi. So what does that involve? Essentially, I am here. My sole mission is to train and educate prospective officer candidates who want to serve in the Air Force or the Space Force as an officer. So how do I balance that in this environment? Um, it's kind of difficult actually because you are dealing with these young adults who some of them are having like fantastic highs in their life, and then some of them are really going through some serious adult problems, and they're so young. And so I think that was one of the biggest surprises when I took this position is seeing that contrast and then having to deal with it mentally on my own because we're often a soundboard for these young adults and knowing some of the loads that they carry, that can be emotionally draining. So here, I am so lucky to have a very positive work environment with very amazing team members who really are other sounding boards for the students. So it doesn't really fall on just me. It falls on the whole team. And then we are there um, to be there for each other, right? When the cadets go home, when they're done for the day, we can close the front office door and then kind of have our own little venting session. Um, so that, and then exercise. Exercise is a huge stress reliever for me. So I really just love putting in, my earbuds and listening to my songs and just having my time.
Yes.
um, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I love that. So like I know, so I'm assuming, so I mean, I guess I shouldn't assume, but the ROTC gig is more of like a Monday through Friday, correct?
You would
Well, I mean, like on
yes.
paper, on
On
paper.
paper, it's Monday through Friday.
So with Intel, like I used to be Intel as well, it was not a Monday through Friday.
Mm-mm.
So we were doing shift work. We were like when I was at Creech, we did 5 on, 3 off, which was very annoying. So
Mm.
the days never lined up. So
Nope.
how when you were Intel, like how is that different with the whole work life balance?
So that one, I can give you a specific location when I was at Hurlburt Field. I was at a unit where we were also doing shift work, and it was a Panama schedule. So I think it was probably the same 5 on, 3 off. And then every 3 months we would switch to, daytime or nighttime. The shift work wasn't so bad for me, but that also, it could get a little bit lonely because once you're on nights and then say it's your day off on, a Monday night, everyone's asleep and you're just kind of like, so yeah,
What to
so
do?
it's a little lonely and that can be a little draining mentally.
So how like what sources or like what would you do in those times? Because like it could get depressing, it could get lonely, and like in what ways would you like actively seek, support, or like were you ever in a situation where you're like, I need to do something about this?
Yeah, so when I was at that same assignment, I actually went to BHOP. Was that behavioral health optimization program? It's
Mhm.
usually located within the family health clinic of a base medical center. And I went there and basically just said I needed to talk to somebody. And I basically spoke with somebody on a weekly basis. The records were very minimal as far as what went into my medical record,
Mm.
which was good for me because, of course, being Intel, I was worried about my security clearance. But so while the records were minimal, I still was able to see a licensed psychologist and just vent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we're talking about work-life balance, but I do want to caveat just for this little part right here because I know that when I was Intel, people were always afraid to seek mental health
Yes.
or to talk to someone because of, again, that security clearance. I
Yeah.
actually know someone um, who did try to seek help, and they were like, well, you can't be on the line, and he got kicked out. So, like, how did you go about that? And like, how did you make sure it was minimal so it really wouldn't affect your clearance?
So I don't remember how I first learned about BHOP, but I think it might have been in a commander's call or some environment like that because it was a group setting. And somebody came up and briefed about it. And
Mm,
they were the ones that said, it doesn't really go in your records, minimal information, blah, blah, blah. So that's what kind of piqued my interest.
mhm.
And then when I went to seek out that service, and it was confirmed, like even the psychologist that I was seeing, she really didn't write down a lot of notes. So it was nice to have that sense of peace, like it's my clearance isn't going to be in danger. But also I did report it to my security manager because I didn't want them to think I was hiding anything. So I reported it, and they said that it was no big deal, if I remember correctly. This was a while ago. This was
Mhm,
probably like 10 or 12 years ago.
mhm.
Um, yeah, so I was just open and honest with them, and it turned out fine for me.
No, That's really good to hear because I think again with like the whole mental health and like seeking it out, like there is that stigma still. And I know
Yes,
as the military and I know the Air Force for sure has been trying to foster more of that
they have.
openness. So,
Yes, they have. In fact, it's probably a lot better today than it was 10 or 12 years ago because
mhm,
they really are, they being big Air Force, are really trying to change that culture and state that mental health is health. So
mhm,
you need to seek it if you need help.
mhm. So have you, so going back to the whole work life balance, like have you like seen if would that have impacted your relationships if you didn't seek someone? Like would you
Oh,
have brought that home?
yeah. Well, I don't know. That's kind of like a big can of worms now because one of the things that I was going to see specifically was for marriage counseling.
Mm,
I had that as a as its own issue that I needed to deal with. So BHOP did help me in a sense. I think probably more than if I never would have went to that service.
So I know like with military and marriages, like we probably have a higher divorce rate.
Huh?
And it is like we bring things home. The deployments, a long times apart. How what advice would you give to like make sure you have that open communication to keep again that work life balance and being able to like foster a good healthy work life balance?
Yeah. So for me specifically, what I can say is I now have a partner in my marriage. And it's truly a partnership. It's not work. So I think the biggest thing is make sure that when you're selecting somebody to be your life partner, that it truly is a partnership. So, I mean, the chores are always split, the duties, the bills, the chauffeuring the child, right? It's
Mm,
not just falling on one person because we're both busy and we both need each other in order to make life work. So, having that partner willing, a willing partner is one. The other thing you had mentioned is open communication. And I know that's such a cliche, but it's so difficult. And I think it's even more difficult when you're younger, when you're in a relationship. So I'm 40. I think I'm a lot wiser now than I was when I was in my 20s. And I know now about myself that I really like to keep things in because I don't want it to be a big deal and I don't want it to cause an argument. But guess what? Because I kept it in, then I start resenting, the whole issue and why it's an issue. Um, and then it would just be an even bigger argument than it would have been if I would have just said something. Hey, this bothers me. Can we talk about it? Um, I mean, I think I'm much better at that now. Still have some work to do.
we're always a work in progress,
Yes,
right?
always, always.
How do you
But yeah,
oh go ahead.
I was just gonna finish up with communication.
Yeah.
It is so important to just have that open communication. And if something is bothering you, like say you're mad because your spouse didn't put the dishes in the dishwasher, actually have a conversation about it. Don't just hold it in.
How okay, so without like getting your partner defensive, right? Like how do
Yeah,
you approach like what are your strategies for that open communication? Cuz it is a two-way street, but
sure.
sometimes like to foster that, we have to make that first step and
Yeah.
all this other stuff. So like what strategies that you implement?
So, what I've been doing or what I've been trying to do lately is always offer, hey, I feel whatever, angry, I feel sad, I feel hurt. Because then it's about my feelings and I'm not placing blame right away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just letting them know how I feel. I'm not sorry, that came out wrong. Placing blame right away. like I'm
No,
a
yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like we probably like if my husband came at me and was like, "You didn't do this," I would be like, "Hold up, I was doing this, 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 and this." Like I would probably get a little defensive. So I completely understand what you're saying.
so yeah, if you can open up that line of communication with first talking about how you feel, I think that's a good start because then hopefully your partner would be like, "Oh, why are you angry?" or "Why are you sad?" or "How can I help?" Um, and then on the flip side, if your partner does that to you, you also need to be willing to listen and try not to go on the defensive.
I know it's hard sometimes.
It is. It
Eh,
is. And we're not perfect people. But I think, inevitably, whenever you do get in an argument, you know what they say, never go to bed angry, right?
mhm,
So just being able to at least, if not say sorry, at least still say I love you at the end of the day.
mhm.
Um, I think that's also helpful.
I'm also working better at that. My husband, I'll admit, he's actually like a lot better at it than me. I'm like, I'm not a light switch. I can't shut that off. So like, yeah, it is a work in progress, and I think creating that, communication where like you can say something and not hold it in for so long. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm gonna probably just a little bit,
just a little
but
bit.
just a little bit. Okay, so like I know you and your partner, you're in a same sex marriage, so you
Yes.
don't technically have the same gender roles,
Yeah, the
right?
traditional gender roles.
So like with women in the military, right? Like I mean, and this is probably the same for you too, like we're caretakers. So
Mm-hmm.
like in I'm very blessed to have a very equal, like my husband is very involved with the kids. But I have seen where, he's working and then I'm working, but then when I come home, I'm the caretaker. Like I'm making sure the kids are good, like doing the traditional laundry because my
Yeah.
husband refuses to do laundry, but he will take out the trash. So that's good. So like how does like especially working that life work balance, like how do you guys make that work?
Yeah. So, well, don't laugh, but we actually sit down on the weekends and she'll have her laptop open, I'll have my laptop open, and we're looking at our calendars.
No,
So we
that's
have a
smart.
calendar meeting for the weekend.
No, that's a great strategy.
It is, but I feel like this should be a TV show. But yeah, so we have a calendar meeting because her job is an hour and a half away from where we live. So she makes that commute all the time. My job is only about 30 minutes away. It's not so bad, but we both work full time and we have a 14-year-old who's a ballerina and requires, practice and school and practice and school. And she can't drive, so somebody's got to take her. Uh, and then, of course, doctor's appointments. And we have 3 fur babies. So then we've got vet appointments. And so once we figure out the appointments and who's doing what, who's going where, the household chores, I don't know, we kind of just we get in a groove like, okay, what do you want to happen this weekend? Well, I need to do some work. I really want to clean the bedroom because it's gross. And, let's food prep. And then she'll go with her top 3 things that she wants to get done over the weekend. And then we really don't give our daughter a say. We would just tell her, these are your things that you're doing.
That's smart though. I mean, you guys are the parents.
Yeah. And then we just do it. For cooking, both of us really enjoy cooking. So that's kind of a thing that we do together. Um, But yeah, we just kind of divide. We take our top 3 things that we want to do and just get it done.
An hour and a half is a very, very long time. So that's
Yeah.
3 hours total, correct?
Uh huh.
Does she, and I'm not trying to like put any, like, does she come home frustrated? Like, I spent 3 hours doing this. Like, do you feel like you need, not, I guess not frustrated, but like,
Yeah.
do you feel, or does she feel like you need to kind of quote, quote, pick up a little bit more of the slack?
Yeah. I don't think she does. Maybe in the beginning when we first moved here and she was first doing that road trip, probably.
Hmm.
And I felt really guilty too. So I did feel like I had to pick up more slack. But now, she's a real champ and she was like, it's no big deal. It's an easy shot. There's no red lights. It's just on the highway the whole time. Um, and she also has some flexibility with her job. So she'll telework once or twice a week to help offset that. Um, so yeah, maybe not. She doesn't hold, I guess maybe animosity is probably the word that we're thinking of.
Yeah, because I don't want to
Yeah.
say disappointed or like whatever, because I
Yeah.
just know like if I was doing that, I'd be like, you better be
Oh,
at least doing like making sure I get home to a home cooked meal. Like,
yes. Oh, and you know what? I should probably mention we do cheat a little bit with the meals because we are both so incredibly busy and have little free time.
mhm.
We do those like home meal kits like Hello Fresh or
Oh yeah, I cheat all
yeah.
the time.
So that's like another thing because those meals are quite tasty and they take 30 minutes. And actually, lately, to be honest, if I'm being honest with you guys, our daughter's been cooking the dinners lately.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
That's a good chore.
it is a good chore and it's a
Mm.
good life skill. So
Yes,
it's good.
yeah, and like as parents, we need to promote those healthier lifestyles
Yeah,
to our
for
younger
sure.
kids. Oh, I love that. Uh, I no, I'm just like I can't wait for my kids to be old enough to like cook clean and like do some of this stuff so I don't have to pick up food constantly off the floor. Like that would be
Yeah,
nice.
then you have to show for them everywhere. So I don't know what's worse.
That is true. That is true. Someone did tell me it was like you have one set of problems when they're younger, but then it's just the problems don't go away. It's just a new set of problems when
You
they
said it.
like a
Yes.
new set of problems. So that's awesome that you guys like have that open communication and like figuring out like what works for you.
Yeah.
Uh, but as like a leader, so as lieutenant colonel, obviously, I guess again, shouldn't assume, but I would assume that you're essentially the commander. People are underneath you, so to
I
speak.
am. Yep.
So, how do you, as a leader, promote that work life balance for your troops?
Oh, that's a good self-reflection question. Um, I mean, other than mentorship with these cadets about the importance of it, it's kind of hard to promote it in this environment because they're college kids, they're going to school, so they really only focus on school and if they have a job, work. But it takes mentorship. Um, So earlier you had mentioned that on paper this job is typically Monday through Friday, which it kind of is, but it really isn't because these cadets, they're doing fundraising activities on the weekend and then there's football games and then we do the color guard for all the football games. And so it really is, it's every day. Not to mention if the cadets need to vent, they are not, they're not prevented from picking up the phone or texting or whatnot. So our team gets pretty busy. But why did I bring this up? I totally had a point and I forgot it. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. So I brought this up because I am often working on the weekends, answering emails, you name it. But what I like to do is when I send the emails, I program them to send, on Monday morning. I don't want people to see that I'm working on the weekend because I don't want them to feel like that they have to work on the weekend. So that might be something I don't know that I'm trying to promote work life balance, even though
Mhm.
I'm not really doing it myself.
No,
I don't know.
I think that's a good tip too, because like sometimes like I feel like we're in that society of like instant gratification and like instant responses and
Yeah,
instant. So like if we don't get something instantly, like
yeah.
we just
People are like, let's go, right?
yes. And then that I know the younger generation, not that we're old, but the newer people coming in, like they're really that anti-hustle life.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't want to be working 24/7. Do you think with these newer cadets coming in, do you think that's going to change that military mindset? Because I know for leadership wise, sometimes it's always we're the first one in, we're the last one out.
Hmm.
But now these younger kids are coming in and they're like, but why?
Yeah,
Like, I could get all my work done in 4 hours. Like, why do I have to be here for 8?
right. Well, um, I think it could change, but it's going to take time. So, like with this younger generation coming in, they might find more efficient ways to do the job. So they don't have to sit at a desk for 8, 10, 12 hours. Um, and I think, with COVID and then mass telework over that year and a half or 2 years, it's been proven that we don't really need to be in an office to get work done. So I think the workforce might change a little bit, but it's going to take time for that culture. So, like these new cadets who are going to be lieutenants now, you know, all of them will eventually become O5s and O6s and will start being in charge. But with that, they'll also be a little bit more mature and will understand, do they have the freedom or the luxury to to not spend 10 hours in an office? What does the mission say? Can you still get the mission done? So I don't know. It has the potential.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably like one of the things that I was frustrated like when I was an airman, like doing the shift work, but there's only one person to be at the desk. But I had this lieutenant who literally was like, well, I'm here, so you have to be here. And I was just on the computer and I'm like, but why?
Right.
And I'm like, and it didn't help with that. To me, it didn't help with that work life balance, right? Like,
Right.
I don't think we were married at the time, fiance at the time, and like he had that Monday through Friday. I'm working shift work.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't have enough time with, my husband or fiance at the time, whatever.
Yeah.
So I know like I resented that a lot.
Hmm.
And that was like a huge, like, not motivator, but like it definitely kind of swayed my willing to stay in the military.
Yeah.
So, as a leader, how can you, like, what advice would you give other people to, like, let their troops have that work life balance?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I need to recognize when people aren't doing the balancing act correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It would be up to me as a leader to tell this person, listen, you've been really grinding. Let's pace it back a little. Why don't you take the day off? Have a long weekend. Do something, right? So it would be up to me as a leader to recognize that
Mm-hmm.
in my folks. And with that, that means you need to know your folks. And that's really important because some people can get just chained to the desk and not leave, which we all have those moments. I get
Mm-hmm.
that. But knowing your people is another thing. Additionally, as a leader, you can mandate like mental health days. You can mandate that people take that, or make sure you hold them accountable and take that time. Go. Why don't you go to the gym? Take some time to decompress. Go to the gym. Um, and for those who are not in a leadership position but feel like they can't get away or they have too much stuff, I want you to think about the fact that there's always going to be too much stuff. No matter how late you stay, there's still going to be more stuff. So if there's something that's important to you, like gym time, put it on your calendar and then treat it like a doctor's appointment, because you're not going to just miss a doctor's appointment because you're too busy. But I think a lot of people have a tendency to be like, oh, it's just the gym. I'm too busy. I'll go later. But no, you got to put it on your calendar and then you have to treat it like a doctor's appointment.
Love that, because that's actually what I say to my clients too.
Yes.
Yes, it is a self-care thing. Like you can't, you know, the famous quote, you can't pour from an empty cup. So like I completely agree with that. And obviously with like the military, like we need to have those PT standards. Um so with, I know you mentioned like self-care. So besides like the gym, what other ways have like you or your troops um like fostered that self-care mentality?
Well, you can also lead by example and making sure that you're not in the office past like 6 p.m. because like people like you would have stayed because they felt obligated, or maybe they were told they need to stay with their
Mm-hmm.
boss. So leading by example and just getting out of there. And yeah, you probably still have work to do, but you can do it at home,
Mm-hmm.
and set the example for your troops. But also talk about it. If you're just open with them, like for me, I get monthly massages. That's my self care treat to
Ooh,
me.
like that.
And it's on my calendar. It's no secret to everybody. But I mean, talking about it and then living it, I think is a great example to show your folks that, oh, it is okay. It's okay to go do
Mm-hmm.
that. So yeah, being open.
So like I know we kind of mentioned before, but you went to Be Hot, but like are there like resources in the military to help promote that self-care?
Absolutely. So Military One Source is a site that is fantastic that people can go to and just kind of peruse, because there's so many support um, items on there. It just depends on what you're really looking for. And that's really helpful for me in this particular position because I'm an hour and a half away from a base. So I'm
Mm.
alone and unafraid out here.
Mm.
But another thing, call it silly, but there are some really fantastic Facebook groups out there that I love seeing how positive these people are towards each other. Um, there's like a women's officer forum, there's like a DC forum. You just got to kind of search. You
Mm-hmm.
could search locally or national, or anyways, search.
Mm-hmm.
But these people are so uplifting and have so many different perspectives to offer. When someone
Mm-hmm.
is asking for advice, whether it's their name tied to it or anonymously, you will get hundreds of responses, and it's all helpful information. So that's another um, less formal resource that people could use, is social media groups.
That's, yeah, I think that's actually how I started this podcast, because you're right. There's like a ton of like really good supportive groups. And I remember posting in like one of, I think it was the women's initiative team, the WIC.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, what would you guys listen to something like this? Like, should we talk about the things like we as women go through in the military and post service and stuff like that? And the feedback that I got was just amazing.
Yeah.
So there are like a ton of really good groups out there.
Yeah.
And I know it's always so hard to ask for help. Like
It is.
I am a person, like I'm like, no, I could do it. I'm like a strong, independent woman. I don't need anyone.
Yes.
So like what advice would you say for someone like me who'd be like, well, I don't need talk therapy. I don't need to do this. Um, by the way, I know how to do self care. But I'm just saying, like, you have those stubborn people, or the people who are like very to themselves. Like, how do you get them out of their shell and be like,
Yeah,
no, it's okay to seek help. It's okay.
it is. So sometimes people like that may not even realize that they do need it. Or sometimes they might see it as a weakness. So it's just going with that whole culture shift is we really need to be open and talk about it. It can't be taboo anymore because the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it. And then it's just becomes a part of our everyday life. I can give you an example just recently where I had my annual physical health assessment
Mm-hmm.
and I was filling out the questionnaire and I was like, wow, these like, I feel really sad looking at some of my answers. And it was just kind of like a self realization. And then sure enough, I got a phone call. Hey, do you want to talk to somebody?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I guess I do. So you may not even realize it, but you're just going through the grind and you think you're going through a rut and maybe you are going through a rut, but it doesn't hurt to talk about it because so many other people go through it at different stages of their lives. Everybody goes through it.
Yes, I agree. I'm also one of those people who are like, I don't need it. And I probably should talk to someone. I just use the gym. But you're right. Like, I think self-reflection is just such a big thing, especially like, regardless, like if you're like you and your partner do the calendars, like maybe you notice that you're doing a little too much and you need to scale back, or like, oh, it's been a while since, I went to the gym, and just putting it, like you said, on the calendar. Uh,
Yeah.
there is something to be said about physically putting it down, because like
Hmm.
we're always so much on tablets and stuff. Like, I'm one of those old school people where like I need a planner and a pen, and I need to be like, okay,
Yeah.
at 6 a.m., like this is what I'm doing. Well, I'm not up at 6, but at like
If you
11, if I was. So I do think, like moving forward, like if people need to have that realization, like physically writing out like their priorities and their work life balance, like, and
were.
adding in that self care, I think it really could shift for a lot of people.
It really could, because that self realization, you would actually make the time to realize stuff about yourself.
Hmm.
And that's also half the battle.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I know I do my monthly self care massage routine, but one of my New Year's resolutions that I've now noticed is I need more time also to, I guess, meditate. But, like, just to be with myself, because I
Hmm.
didn't realize that I was suffering, I had symptoms of depression until that PHA came up.
Hmm.
So if I took the time to actually just be one with myself,
Yeah.
maybe I would have known that.
Yeah. I always tell myself I'm going to try meditation, and I try. I just, my mind, like literally, like I cannot shut my mind off. And
You know
someone's
what? I was
what?
gonna say, you probably need to try hot yoga. Have you tried hot yoga?
Yes, actually, it's harder than it
Uh-huh.
sounds.
Yeah.
And I
And
also got very frustrated when I was so sweaty and I couldn't hold the position. But
but your mind was only on yoga, right? It wasn't on anything else.
yeah, that is true. That is true. I'm also in the middle of nowhere, so maybe I'll just do it in the sauna. So
Yeah.
as women, we're a little bit more in touch with our feelings, maybe, would you say?
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you like encountered like any stereotypes or expectations like related to like the gender roles in the military? Like, I
Oh,
like, how can we women help support the men to foster this community of being open, instead of like the typical, we'll just quote quote man up, or
right.
keep it to yourself?
Wow. That's a good question. And when you first started asking it, I immediately went back to a time where I was previously married and we went to a casino. We were on vacation. And you have to show your ID before you go on the casino floor. So I showed my military ID. Guy let me in. He showed his military ID, and he goes, hey, so are you a pilot? I was like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what? You totally just like dismissed me, but asked the dude if he was the pilot. Like,
No. Yeah.
um, anyways, so those types of instances happen more often than not,
Oh,
which
it
is,
happened to me too.
but it's not only up to us as women who serve to correct the population, because I don't think people do it maliciously,
Mm-hmm.
right? They only know what's in the movies, and unfortunately, in the movies, it's all male dominated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not only do we need to correct it when it happens, but if men who are serving are saying something or see it, they too need to speak up
Mm-hmm.
to help be that voice as well. And then as far as the whole, well, you just got to man up. I don't know if I really have a good answer for that because there are some times where there's going to be moments where you just need to.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
honestly, right? Like service before self. Like I'm not saying like we always have to put ourselves first,
Oh yeah.
but I mean, so you're right. Like there are times where like we do have to embrace the suck, but
Yeah.
it's just how much embracing the suck before the breaking point.
Yeah. That's gosh, that's such a good question. I really don't know how to answer that other than you need to be self-aware and in tune. And if you're starting to get at that breaking point, you got to say something.
Mm-hmm.
Another example that just popped in my head was a long time ago, but we were on a ruck march,
Mm-hmm.
right? And rucks are not the lightest thing to carry around.
Mm-mm.
And so, one of the guys that was marching next to me, super thoughtful and was like, do you want me to carry some of your stuff and
Mm.
lighten the load? Which I thought was very thoughtful and I appreciated it. And I really wanted to take him up on it too.
Yeah.
But I was like, but at the same time, if I did, what kind of wingman would I be if I can't even do what's expected of me, especially if I know that I can do it? Like
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't at a breaking moment, so I knew that I could continue on.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess really I'm just kind of circling back to you got to know yourself and you got to know when to ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any like books or like podcasts that you recommend to do? I know I'm putting you on the spot like so many times. I'm so sorry. I'm
Sure.
like going off script on the questions. Uh,
So
my bad.
that's books. I am awful in the fact that I don't really read for leisure anymore. But it is my New Year's resolution because I want to. And so I'm going to put it on my calendar when it's time for me to read. Um, so sadly I can't really offer up any good books lately. And even if I was reading, it would probably be some silly, I don't know, scandalous murder or something, not even anything on leadership. And then same thing with podcasts. I oh, I can't wait to start listening to yours.
Thanks, girl.
Yes. But honestly, in the morning, I'll just listen to like news podcasts while I'm getting ready.
Mm.
Um, yeah, but I'm gonna add yours in.
Oh, okay. I appreciate that. Because every time you talk about self-realization, there was, and I need to physically read. Like I have Audible, so like I always just not always, but for if I'm on like a long drive, I'll put on Audible, and
Yeah.
mine's a lot of self-help books. But Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is, I think, a really, really good book for people kind of being socially aware and also
Okay.
personally aware. And the reason why I think about it is because my school just made me reread it. So I got my master's in business, and in that program, they made me read this book. And now I'm trying to be a PT, and they're making me read this book. So clearly,
Oh
it
no.
is a very important tool to have because
Yeah.
you're right. Like self realization is, you know, it's it's a work in progress. You're always going to be trying to like self-improve, and
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think it's ever going to end. Like you're a lifelong learner. Like you're supposed to learn about yourself, but besides self-realization, as a leader, like being socially aware and seeing those things with your troops or just like people in general, just seeing if they're off or whatever. And this book like does kind of dive into it.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not telling you to read it. I'm
Oh,
just
no.
you were like no, I just think it is a good tool. I honestly tell everyone about it because like it's so encompassing, and I think it just rounds people out. And
Yeah.
I think it's a really good. It's on Audible. I think it's only like four. I think it's only like 4 hours. But no, it's like really good. Because especially with this whole work life balance, like we need to be socially aware. We need to be personally aware. And you know, kind of going back to that work life balance. I know we're in the military, or well, you are. I'm just
Well, you did, sir.
yeah, no, I'm just saying. Well, I'm a military spouse right now, so but so having that dynamic, like, how do you like involve your family in the decision making processes related to your military career?
Oh, well, it's all about communication. So I remember when I was first considering taking this job,
Mm,
I came home simply from work and was like, listen, the applications are open for this job. I don't know if I'm going to get selected. And even if I am selected, I don't know where I'm going to go, you
yeah.
know? And she was completely supportive. She was like, absolutely, it's no big deal. Let's do it. Helped me with the application, and here I am. So it's just about being open and honest with them,
Hmm.
and letting them know that, it's all just kind of like a roll of the dice on where we go next. She has been fantastic in terms of being so supportive and following my career. But I think it's probably soon going to be time for us to flip that script, right? Because eventually I am going to retire, and she's still climbing that ladder. So now it'll just be me supporting her and wherever her work would take her. And then our daughter has adapted beautifully. Whenever we move, is always able to make friends. So it's just always with her though. It's always explaining the positives about moving to a new place and really focusing on that instead of the negatives.
Yeah, because I will admit, like I that would probably say I would. It's probably like one of the biggest arguments between me and my husband, right? Like I'm always like, I'm following you. Like, what if there's no job here? And so it does get straining sometimes because you're
Yeah.
like, well, what about my career? Like, what about what I want? And
Hmm.
I think you're right. It's just that communication. And I have been working on myself on being better about that, like that kind of that resentment piece. But
Yeah.
like that positivity, like focusing on the positives, I think is extremely helpful. Like, and every time that, and I know I keep saying I'm like literally in the middle of nowhere, and I'm truly, truly trying to find the positives about this place. But I'm like, it does have that smaller community. Like, it's more
Hmm.
of that, it's a very small town, Altus, Oklahoma. But like that is the positive. Like it is a very close knit, community, and it gives me a little bit more chance, like with the kids. So, I mean, going kind of back to like involving the family, like, yeah, like be like, okay, let's focus on the positives. Like,
Yeah.
I know it takes us an hour to go to Sam's Club or the airport,
Oh
but
no.
girl, we got a Chick-fil-A and we were so excited. All right, like, I really wish I could explain how small this place is. But it is trying to find that, that balance. And I think like for my husband, it is a lot slower pace than we were at Eglin.
Yeah.
Um, so in Florida, but like, so he does have a little bit more time to like if something were to happen, he could go grab the kids.
Yeah.
So I think in the long run, it probably evens out. But you're right, just having that communication and focusing on the positives, I think
Yeah.
is so huge. And there's something about positive psychology too, where I'm not going to speak on it because I don't know it. I just know that there is some like some proof and research of positively thinking about situations than
Yeah.
like just being like, well, this place sucks. Which
Right.
I mean, I still do.
Like nobody wants to be around you if you're always like in a negative mood or always seeing the negative things. Like nobody likes a Dior.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so true.
Yeah.
Uh, so last minute advice or tips and tricks for someone who wants to create that work life balance or
All
someone
right.
who's struggling. Like, give me your like cliff note version of what people should take away from this.
Okay. So this is probably also a little cliche, but it really is so true. Your work is only temporary. You know, 20 years if you want to put in the full thing to get your retirement, but your family is supposed to be forever. And if you are constantly choosing work over family or work over yourself, you're not balancing. And then that's going to cause strife. And for a lot of people, it causes divorce. So if you can feel it bubbling in your marriage, you got to take a step back from work. Um, it shouldn't be like that. There are going to be times where work is going to win. You know, maybe you're going through a huge inspection, but that's a very, very short blip because there's also going to be times where your family and yourself is going to win because you need to go on vacation. Um, that's probably another piece of advice. If you can find the time, no, excuse me, make the time, find the money
Yes.
go on vacation. And it doesn't have to be anything huge. Like you don't need to go to Disney World in Hawaii. Like maybe you just go to the next city over and be a tourist for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess really that's the big ball of figuring out, are you really doing work life balance? And then the last thing that's just really worked for me that we already touched on is the calendar. You gotta stick with the calendar.
I love that. That is on my New Year's resolutions as well, like trying to stick to it.
Yeah, well,
It
you know what? I once saw somebody, he was talking about, all of this unaccounted time that you
mm,
don't schedule for things, and you waste so much time because it's unaccounted for.
mm.
Because guess what? You start scrolling on Facebook and then YouTube, and it's a hole, right?
Mhm.
So if you account for things that you really need or want to get done and put it on the calendar, you will be much more productive.
Yeah, that production hack right there. I
Yeah.
love it. So, where can people find you? Y-
Well, right now I'm on campus at the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg. So my school, if they'd like to email me, it's my first name dot last name. I'll spell it at usm.edu. So SHEENA dot PULEALII at usm.edu. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. You can just search for me by my first and last name. Not a lot of people have my last name. Really easy to find.
That is, yeah, it is a very unique last name, but
Yeah.
it's,
Actually, you'll probably, if people Google me, they'll see all of my brothers. Um,
oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. Oh, actually, I know you wanted to talk about ROTC real quick. So here's your little
Oh,
snippet to do your
yeah.
elevator pitch.
Well, if anybody is interested in joining the ROTC program, it's offered at over 1,100 institutions across the United States. The advantage of it is you can go to school and earn your bachelor's degree at the same time that you get this very basic foundational training for Air Force or Space Force. And by the time you graduate with your bachelor's degree, like the very next day, you'll commission as an officer. And then you'll be on to a career of 4, 10, 20 years if you want. Um, if you don't like it after the first 4 years, you're free to get out, and you have that on your resume, and then you can go be a productive member of society doing something else. So there's really no bad thing to it, no bad point.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. And then what better way to go to the University of Southern Mississippi, correct?
That's right.
Yes. And then I have you. So it's like a win-win-win.
Yay.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview and just sharing your perspective and just, again, your time and expertise.
I appreciate it, and thank you for taking the time to put something like this together. And I know all the research and the organization that it takes behind it. So thank you for that. And I just hope that I said something that might have been helpful to somebody.
I think you have. So I'm excited to snippet all of like the key points. But anyway, I digress. I think this was great. But thanks again. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to her at her email or Instagram, or find her on Instagram and Facebook. Other than that, we will talk to you soon.
Thank you.